Welcome to the Self-Publishing School podcast. This is the podcast to listen to if you're an aspiring writer or an author who wants to be more successful. On this show, you'll learn how to write and launch a book successfully, all from the top authors and people just like you who are doing it at the highest level. I'm your host, Chandler Bolt, the founder of Self-Publishing School, the author of the book called Published, and the CEO of selfpublishing.com. For free training on how to publish a book that sells 10,000 copies, go to selfpublishing.com/free training. Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Verne Harnish. Now, Verne is the founder of the world-renowned EO organization or entrepreneurs organization with over 11,000 members worldwide. And he's also the founder and CEO of Gazelles, a global executive education and coaching company with over 180 partners on 6 continents. Now, he's written 3 books, including Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, The Greatest Business Decisions of All Time, and his most book is called Scaling Up. I've got it right here, and I've actually read all 3 of the books, and they're all great. He's also a private investor in many scale-ups. He resides in Barcelona, Spain with his wife and 4 children, loves playing piano, tennis, and even magic as a card-carrying member of the International Brotherhood of Musicians. I am so excited about this interview today. A quick story before we kick off, Verne. This is kind of funny. So, obviously you came and spoke in San Diego at the EO chapter here. And my buddy, he went with me and we had a good time. We're both in EO, and we were driving home and we were just like, man, that rocked my world. And he looked over and he turned to me and he said, I'm pretty sure that was the best presentation that I've ever seen in my life. And I looked at him and I was like, Austin, that's crazy. Like that's a really bold statement. And I'm just going to call BS. And he said, better. And I thought for a couple minutes and I couldn't come up with it. And then we concluded that it was that point in our lives, the best presentation that we've seen. So hopefully I got the bar high, but I'm really excited to dive in here. Welcome.
Well, glad to be here. Though it seems like we're having a little bit of a connection problem. Can you hear me fine?
Yep, I can hear you fine. It's all good on my end.
Yeah, good. I'm just getting a little bit of fuzziness back on your end.
Cool.
We're glad to be here. Always happy to talk about self-publishing.
Well, hey, let's take us back. Obviously you've got 3 books under your belt. But the first one was written, I think, back in 2002. That's when it was released. So take us back to that time. Why did you decide to write your first book, and what was the purpose behind it?
Yeah, well, first of all, I wish I'd written it 10 years before. It's absolutely the best marketing tool any human being can have. We encourage CEOs of companies to write a book. It's the best marketing tool you've got for customers, potential employees, and all of that. So I wish I'd done it in 92 instead of 2002. But I had launched this executive program at MIT for EO and had run the program, and really through that had developed this curriculum around what does it take to scale up a company. And we ended up then branding it around the Rockefeller Habits, John D. Rockefeller's kind of habits. And it really started out as a series of articles. Back there in the go-go days of the internet, a dear friend of mine had got me a contract with, can't remember the name. It had this strange name like Brain something, but it was this internet startup that was going to try to capture all the knowledge on the planet. And they paid this unbelievable amount of money, like $3,000 per article. And I got a contract to do like 8 articles. So it was like 24 grand. And I paid ghostwriter, Ellen Wojohn, who had written an article about me in Inc. magazine a decade before. I'd stayed in touch with her. In fact, I always recommend that's where you find these writers to help you if you're not really particularly into writing. Is, find someone who's written a story about you and you think did a pretty good job. And so that was Ellen at Inc. magazine. And so we paid her to write these articles. They published them, but it was crazy. You got the rights back 12 months later. And so it was really waiting till those rights had reverted back to me. We took 8 of those articles, plus an article I wrote for Fortune magazine. And I added one then that a friend wrote for me, Rich Russakoff. And we crunched them all together, and that became, after writing all the transitions, the first Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And by the way, it's got in print over 250,000 books.
Wow. And what made you decide to brand it as Rockefeller Habits?
Well, I was, in fact, visiting a dear friend of mine, John Anderson, who I'll see here in a couple of weeks. John was our very first coaching partner for Gazelles in Detroit. And when I was visiting, his wife had just finished this amazing biography on John D. Rockefeller called Titan. And she said, "You've got to read this book." And so I did. And as I was reading through it, I recognized that this young guy had put in place, naturally, many of the kind of habits that we had discovered were critical to scaling up any kind of business. And I thought, look, here's the wealthiest guy on the planet by a factor of 3 over Gates or anyone else. And so I thought, what a great branding opportunity. And in some sense, I always kind of thought or hoped the Rockefellers might sue me so I would get some press. You know, as they say, any press is good press. But we sent one off to Nelson Rockefeller, and a buddy of mine sold his company to the Rockefellers and shared the books. And I think the fact that, you know, we talk positively about John when a lot of folks have had quite bad press about him, I think was important to the family. And I got to meet Mark Rockefeller years later, the exact direct descendant, 4th generation from John D. Sr. And so, you know, all was good. But I did promise Mark that I would start to drift away from then that Rockefeller name, and that's why we've got Scaling Up here today. But that's a little bit of the history and where the name came from. Got
it. Now, you said 250,000 copies. What did you do to launch the book and to market the book up front? And how do you feel like it was able to take off as well as it has?
Yeah. Well, I was lucky. I had a friend agent, Bill Gladstone. You know, Bill's been the agent to like over 10,000 of the most popular tech books. In fact, he helped self-publish the most successful self-published book in history, the one about the cures book. And Bill then hooked me up with a friend of his, Kenji Sugihara, who launched Select Books. And I was his very first book that he really structured as a self-publishing deal for me. Because look, I didn't know how to get an ISBN number or find a printer or get it up on Amazon or any of that kind of stuff. And so Kenji was kind enough to get that done. And I think first I had a good following in EO. I think it's good to have your own network. And then I wrote a book, and I figured this out a little bit later on. I wrote a book that more than only the CEO or more than only one person in the company needed to read. It was a kind of a book where if the CEO or leader liked it, they said it made sense for me to buy copies and for everybody else inside the company, because I need them to learn what it is that we're trying to do. And so I thought, in fact, we've got a new book coming out here shortly, and we specifically wrote it as a book for frontline employees to read so that we can sell, you know, you make one sale and you end up making 100 sales. And I think that was really the key to it being able to scale up to 250,000 copies. And then word of mouth did the job. I think if you write a good book, it's, you know, the network effect's going to help you out. If you don't, and I got to tell you, my job's to read many of the business books each year, and there's a lot of really crappy books. Now, that being said, you know, on the other side, when you're using it just as a business card, as long as I think you got a great looking cover, and I think that's where I see a lot of folks mess up, is they end up looking like it's self-published kind of cover. I think you need a great title. I think Mastering the Rockefeller Habits ended up being a great title for us. It was a good looking cover. I like Scaling Up a lot better as a cover. I think that's enough. You know, you pass it out and folks aren't going to throw it away like a business card, and they're going to sit it there on their shelf, and it's a good tool.
Yeah. And so you obviously decided to do you did a book in between, but then you decided to do the updated version, the 2.0, if you will, of Mastering the Rockefeller Habits and Scaling Up. Now, what made you decide to release that second version?
It was time. First one was 12 years old. We had learned a lot of stuff after applying the tools. We created a whole bunch more tools, new frameworks. And so it was time to kind of take that new IP and get it bundled properly and get it out there to the marketplace. But what was interesting, this book, I really stole an idea from Alex Osterwalder. And I thought, I really want to crowdsource this second book. And so I wrote it, and it was interesting. I designed the cover so it looked like the first Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. It was all black and white. It was the same size and all that. And I put it out. I did 500 galley copies, put it out to my friends and colleagues and clients and coaches. And Chandler is painful. I gave them a month to come back and tell me, I'm hoping they're going to find typos and technical mistakes. They basically came back and said, I'm sorry, Verne, you may be the growth guy, but your baby is both ugly and stupid. And it was like really a nail through my heart. But they were right. And we went back, we totally redesigned it. We reshaped it, sized it, all 4-color all the way through, redesigned radically the cover. And they were right. We rewrote all 70,000 words based on the feedback. And it's won 8 international awards since, and it's already passed 150,000 copies. So it's out just over a year. So we're real happy with the power of getting the crowd involved in really giving feedback, editing it, and that kind of stuff than the lone entrepreneur trying to do it themselves.
Yeah. You just touched on this, but having read them sequentially, I read, it was, I picked up Mastering the Rockefeller Habits because I didn't know the new one was out. And so I sought it out, I'm searching on the internet, I found it, and I'm like, yes, I got this copy. And then I read it, and then I'm talking with a friend, and they're like, dude, he just released the updated version. You need to read that. So it was interesting moving into the next book, into Scaling Up. And I feel like Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, it's more of a traditional style book, right? Yeah. It flows and all that stuff. But then when you get into Scaling Up, it's a textbook on steroids and an instruction manual on how to run a company. So I'm curious what that process was like, from going from that to everything was so defined, refined. You've got the worksheets, you've got everything. What was that process like?
Well, it's interesting. I think though, and I'm in the process of writing it, Scaling Up, as you said, has really ended up being kind of the technical manual. And it's screaming for there to be a smaller version that's more like Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, that kind of provides a good overview and the like. And then you can kind of turn to this textbook workbook. And so I think Mastering the Rockefeller Habits was a good, like I said, traditional style book. This other one went way far the other direction. And we're going to come back now. We're actually in the middle of writing 5 books. We're going deep in each of the people, strategy, execution, and cash. Like I'll be reviewing a big part of the new people book this week. And then we're going to do this overview book. So we're really putting together a system as opposed to a single book.
That's great. I can't wait for those to come out personally. And I know it's funny, you mentioned that your job is to distill a lot of books. Well, I remember being at the talk in San Diego, and I had ordered 7 books off of Amazon by the time your talk was over. Because it was like, if you like this, for more about that, read this book. If you like this.
Yeah, we referenced 40 books in Scaling Up. Our view is it takes a village of gurus. Really, honestly, nobody has all the answers, and anybody who says they do, whether they're a doctor in the medical field or a thought leader in the business world, they're blowing smoke. You've got to kind of triangulate into the answers from a lot of different sources.
Hey, Chandler Bolt here. I hope you're loving this episode so far. It's time to go from inspiration to implementation. All right, so if you've learned something, we want to help you implement what you've learned with your book. So what I want you to do right now is go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a publishing consultation with one of the experts on my team. We'll talk about your goals for your book, your dreams, your challenges, your next steps, and we'll start putting together a plan. All right, so go to selfpublishing.com/schedule, book a call with the team. Let's see how we can help with your book. It's time to implement. You said you're working on 5 books right now. Tell us a little bit more about what's your writing process and your routine look like?
Well, I write every Thursday, and I really relish it. It's a chance for me to kind of, I've gotten really all the business stuff done by Wednesday. Thursday, then I can kind of relax and I do research and writing. And then I've got a lot of writing partners. So each of the 4 books that are a deep dive in people, strategy, execution, and cash, I've got a co-author with. So Sebastian Ross, a good dear friend of mine here locally on the People book. And so we're spending a good part of Thursday digging into the first section of that 4-section book. And so it's a very collaborative process that I enjoy. So I've got co-authors on all the books, which makes it fun. And then I've got a ghostwriter that helps me out on our fortune columns and research and that kind of stuff that's necessary. But I did, at the end of the day, write every one of the 70,000 words in Scaling Up. I figured out at the end, I've got to be the one who gets kind of the final words down. And then obviously we get some good editing and copywriting as a result.
Have you found that to be the case with all the books? It's like you have a ghostwriter to help distill the ideas and you almost go back through and do a rewrite yourself?
Well, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, Ellen, in writing the first couple articles, it was tough. She really hadn't been able to capture my voice, but by about the 3rd article, she could interview me. They were always all my ideas, but she could interview me and pretty well capture my voice. And I got to say, I didn't have much of a voice back then, so it wasn't hard, to capture. Now I think I've got a style and an approach, and so I needed to write that in Scaling Up. Obviously, my second book, that was a compilation of us going to various writers at Fortune magazine and just having them write up each one of those 18 decisions. And so that was more of an editing function and a direction function.
What do you feel like it took for you to find your voice over the years?
It's the 10,000 hours that Gladwell talks about. You're just out there giving, 200 presentations a year kind of thing. And, after you do that for 2-3 decades, it's my 34th year of teaching, you probably ought to by now have it figured out.
Now, you say you write on Thursdays.
Side note, I was kidding with my children tonight. I was reminding them some of the original, you went and spoke to everyone you could, the local Rotary Club, the local, whoever would let you stand up and speak, whether they were paying attention or not, you took the opportunity.
So you definitely got your 10,000 hours, maybe just exclusively in Rotary clubs early on. Sure. Okay. You mentioned writing just on Thursdays. Is that a full day of writing? Is that the only day that you write? Is that every week of the year? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, it's pretty much, that's the day I write my weekly insights. And it's in the process of writing the weekly insights and I'm researching, reading books, I'm recommending books. And so it allows me to kind of concentrate my efforts in terms of learning, reading, and distilling it then into my own thoughts. And then once you've got all of that, now when you actually get down and sit down and write the book, I just say goodbye to my family. And it's, you go into monk mode, as Jim Collins describes it. And it's 6 to 8 hours a day for, 2 to 3 months. But because I've done all this other writing, then the words tend to flow. It's already there. You've already had to distill it. You've already done a lot of the research. You can pull it together. So a lot of it's really just trying to get the flow correct.
So how do you balance that, like having a big writing project or a deadline coming up with running your business? Because obviously if you're going 6 to 8 hours a day for 2 to 3 months, like how do you balance the two?
Well, but I really wanted to pivot in the company to where I just enjoy writing and speaking. I don't really enjoy any of the things else that's required to run our company. So I've got 6 CEOs that run the various companies, like our coaching division, our online education division, the technology side, the investment banking side, that kind of thing, so that I am pretty well freed up to do these kind of things. Mainly marketing, interviews like this, keynote speeches, and then do the writing. But when it comes to the crunch time, in every case, and that's why it's a little tough on the family, it's been during the summertime, because that's our slowest time for our business, and that's when it makes the most sense. And that also usually leads then to a typical fall release for us, which finds the best time to release a book into our space.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense. Now, do you have a morning routine?
I do. It's in fact, I have to report it out to my coach. It's a very short meditation. Learned it at the Art of Living ashram in Bangalore by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar. It's kind of a breathing meditation process. Then I alternate between kind of doing planks, push-ups, and this little 4-minute Tabata exercise routine. And then, that's it. That kind of gets me up and running. And then I try to work on whatever's I've got a big proposal that we've got to put together, a deck for a multi-million-dollar opportunity we're going after. And so that's slated for tomorrow morning. And what's nice about being in Barcelona is I'm 6 hours away from the US, 6 to 9 hours. No emails really come in till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I've got a lot of quiet space to work on major projects like that.
That makes sense. Now, do you have does your routine vary from when you're in writing mode versus when you're in business mode?
Well, of course, when I'm in the writing mode, that kind of 6 o'clock in the morning or 6, 7 in the morning till 2, 3 in the afternoon, which is when I'd be working on major initiatives for the company, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I really crank hard Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday on the company. Thursdays, then this kind of reading, relaxing. And Friday, I dedicate to my charities. So I pretty well stick to that routine. The only thing is I just replace those big chunks of times I'd be working on projects for the company with writing, because I consider the book, and we considered the Scaling Up book, the most significant project I needed to get done for the company at that time.
Got it. Now let's talk a little bit about how these books have fed into the business. I'd love to get into that. So obviously EO started back in 1987, and it looks like Mastering the Rockefeller Habits came out in 2002. How has that book, and I guess even then moving into Scaling Up, like how has that impacted what you're doing with EO, with Gazelles, and with your other businesses?
Well, obviously our big target market's YPO more than even EO. And again, a book is your calling card. It's like your pitch deck. And, nobody wants to be sold, particularly entrepreneurs. They want to be educated. And that's how you market in the 21st century anyway, is you educate, you don't sell. And so it's our first foray. Somebody in a forum member says, hey, I've been using these tools. I've had great success. The other forum members say, hey, I want to read the book. And then that leads to speaking gigs. And then a lot of those companies belong to trade associations. And they're like, hey, if I bring one of my guys in to speak at the trade association meeting, then I get to introduce him. And we know Verne's going to do a great job. So it makes us look good in the industry. And so you just kind of network your way through, because of EO and YPO and Vistage, into various industries. And so I end up keynoting a lot of industry meetings, because our clients are the past, present, or future president of the trade association.
Now, did you see a big, like with the growth trajectory of EO and with YPO, like, did you see any change after you released Mastering the Rockefeller Habits in 2002? Like, did you see any correlation between that book selling and the business growing? Like, what did that look like?
No, well, remember, EO is not my business. I I launched it in 87, but I was done in 90. I ran
Mm-hmm.
the executive program then from 91 to 90 to 2006.
Yep.
But I launched Gazelles in 97. So it absolutely, the book absolutely has propelled, and the books have propelled Gazelles into 182 coaching partners on 6 continents and that kind of stuff. But we had nothing to do with EO's growth. EO was going to grow, with or without me and its books.
Mm-hmm. And what about the Gazelle side of things? Like, what does that process look like from when someone picks up the book to when they move into Gazelles coaching? And like, how have you seen the book, not only the first one, but then also the second one? Like, how have you seen that directly impact business?
Well, by the way, I don't know if we got down to the details, but that's why I think it's so critical for people to self-publish. Because, under self-publishing, that book of mine that's 4-color, 256 pages, only cost me a little over $2. But now that's at 50,000 copies. But it's not much more if you only had 5,000 copies. It's maybe $4.
Mm-hmm.
And you can afford to give them away. I find that I've got to give away about 10% to drive the other 90%. And you bundle them with your speeches, and they're a nice trade-off. So I'll say, here's my speaking fee, and it includes 400 copies of the book. And if somebody thinks my fee's too high, then I can discount back on the retail value of 400 books. On the flip side, if I include it in my speaker fee, 400 books at $2 is only $800. It's not much, but it's perceived as a really nice gift. And now that you've got the book in everyone's hand, because we've got a book that a lot of people want to buy lots of, we sell boxes of books every week directly. That's how it gets a multiplier effect. So typically I speak, everyone's got a copy of the book. They go back, they say, wow, I like this. They go buy a box of books. In the middle of that process, they say, hey, maybe I ought to get some help. So they get a hold of one of our coaches, and then before long, it's a multi-year coaching engagement.
Got it. So I like that 10% versus 90% rule. Of the 10%, is most of that 10% in speeches? Are there other ways that you also give the book away?
Yeah, we'll do donations. There was an auction that was raising a bunch of money. It had the right audience. And so in the gift bag, we donated 200 books to that particular auction because, again, it had our target market. They're available. A lot of the YPO events that I do, like I'm getting ready to speak at a family university for YPO Southern 7. I'll have a bunch of the books there that we'll either sell or give away. But you're right. A lot of the giveaway will be, like GLC. EO had its big global leadership conference, and that's got, I don't know how many, we donated, I think 2,500 books. So we got that book in the hand of every leader within every EO chapter. And yeah, it looks like on paper that many books would cost me, $25,000, but it cost me $5,000 plus shipping. And that's a minor cost. But those 4,000 that we gave away, I know has helped really drive a lot of the 150,000 books that we have sold.
And it's like you're sending out little mini salesmen for your company.
I'm telling you, this is your pitch deck.
So what you've got the speaking, you've got Gazelles. What are other things what are other ways that you drive into back end, like business for yourself and for your companies off of the back end of these books?
Well, first we've got our workshops that come off the book. So we're running 80 of those in the United States and others around the world. We've got these more 2.5-day intensives. I'm running one in Munich next week. We run those all over the world. Just had one in Madrid a few weeks ago. And so those are, highly paid events. So you've got the workshops that come off the book. Then you've got the coaching, and those are $30,000 to $100,000 contracts that are obviously based on the tools that we have in the book. Then we have our whole online education division, of which Scaling Up is one of the major courses, but we've now expanded to the other gurus that we feature in the book, like Salim Ismail's Exponential Organization, Jack Stack's Great Game of Business, Brad Smart's Top Grading. So those 40 books that I mentioned in my book, we've got workshops or online tools that represent all of those. So that's a whole nother division. But the one that's actually one of the most profitable is that we're then cherry picking out of our 2,000 clients that we have at any one time, those that we're directly investing in. So I'm an investor in Build Direct, as a result of their activity with us. And that company's been doubling every year. I think it's on its way to $500 million this year. I'm a major investor in a company called Barcelona Housing Systems that just partnered with the Chinese. We got our first 2.6 billion. We're building literally cities. One's going up right now in Copio, Chile. So the money that we'll earn off of the investments that we're making into the companies that we're helping to scale up, that's multiple X times the coaching fees and the workshop fees and the speaker fees and that kind of stuff. So that's been our real way to monetize.
Wow, that's great. And that's a great vetting process because they're clients. And that so someone could easily go all the way from, hey, I just got this book Scaling Up, all the way through the process and then end up having you invest in their company.
Yeah, with Rackspace, everybody knows that, helped make Graham Weston one of the young billionaires in Austin. We got friends and family stock at $3 before they went public and cashed out at 60. And so to get 20x on your investment, those are good returns in, just 18 to 24 months.
Now, what's one or two surprising benefits or ways that you've made money off the back end of your books that when you wrote them, you didn't really expect, but then it just happened?
Well, it's this one. I hadn't even thought to do this, but we were hosting Jim Collins at our Fortune Summit. And Jim's latest book, Great by Choice, to me is absolutely the best book of all he's written, though it's not doing as well ranking wise on Amazon. I've actually almost felt like I want to be this one-man marketing machine for Jim's book because I think it's so outstanding. And in there, he's got a chapter on return on luck. And he's talking about how it's the people who really take advantage of the luck that they've got that do well. And he said, so take 15 minutes and talk at your table about where you either didn't take advantage of luck that you had or whatever. And I'm sitting there lamenting where I literally had the chance decades ago to put money into Dell early on, Apple early on, and many of the other companies. It's the kind of thing where if I put just $1,000 in when I could have, it would have made me tens of millions of dollars and I wouldn't be doing this, right? And so I'm like crying. And then I'm like, wait a second. But who's next? Dell, Microsoft, Apple. And I'm literally sitting in the middle of our summit and I'm like, it's Jeff Booth over at Build Direct. That guy has got the same mojo. And I literally got right up in the middle of the session, ran over there, got on my hands and knees and said, Jeff, you have to let me invest in your company. And he goes, it's funny you're asking. We just are in the middle of closing our latest round. I'm happy to let you in. And that's kind of that was my first major investment. And I said, all right, I'm going to start looking more. So that was a very alternative back end way to really monetize the book, because the book was what gave us brand and had Build Direct as a client.
Got it. Now, the trajectory for book sales on the back end of Scaling Up, was that a big spike, then kind of tailed off? Have you seen it stay consistent? Is it growing? What does that look like?
We drive a big spike at the very beginning through pre-sales. But no, the thing is, it's been this very consistent. We've been the number 1 or number 2 ranked strategy and competition book on Amazon since the beginning, and it's been almost 18 months now. It just consistently sells a chunk of books. we have spikes around the planning seasons. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
November through February, and I see that on my commission checks. And we have other kind of a planning spike here in the summertime, but it's steady and growing. It's steady and growing, which is what's been nice.
That's great. And
Rockefeller Habits was absolutely an exponential curve. 10,000 books year one. I just checked my numbers from Kenji. We were at 22,000 books by 2004. And then, over the next 10 years, that went from 22,000 to 250,000.
Wow. That's fantastic. It's funny. So I live in an entrepreneur house. All of us run online businesses in the house. There's 5 of us. The running joke is here. If scaling up was not within arm's reach, that there's like a problem, and I can see how that really drives sales for you, because not only are we buying multiple copies for ourselves, we're buying them for our employees, we're buying them for our team, like all those things.
You got it. And I think one of the things that's important, I think what's worked well is we've made all of our stuff open source. So you don't even have to buy the book. You can go to scalingup.com, and we've got a free chapter on how to do strategic planning, which is one of the things we're best known for. And you don't even have to spend a penny. All of our tools are open source. Those are given away in multiple languages. And I do think there's something about, you've got to have a mentality that you're willing to give away in order to get this whole Adam Grant give and take, I think is real. And again, self-publishing really makes it a lot easier for you to give, because if you go with a traditional publisher, their main customer is you. Writers don't realize that, but the traditional publishers, they just calculate how many books they think you and your activities are going to sell. They multiply times how much money they're going to make, and then they give you a percentage of that. And then they make you buy your own book for a lot of money. And it's very frustrating. Plus, I find I update my book every edition. And so I'm making minor changes every printing, and it helps me keep it current.
You're preaching to the choir on all that stuff. What would you say? What would it be a piece of advice that you'd give to someone who's running a business, and like you said, they need that business card, they need that book that's going to drive sales for them, that's going to help them grow their business, but maybe they just can't find the time, they aren't able to make the time to get that book? What would it be your advice to them to be able to get it done and take it to the finish line?
It's going to sound like a commercial, but just call my friend Adam Whitty at Advantage Media and just say, speak a book. It's what Jack Daly did. Jack's been the sales guru, has been speaking all over the world for decades. And we're all like, Jack, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. I don't have time, da-da-da-da-da. And he just went and did the speak a book thing. And he had a book, Hyper Sales Growth, and it's doing unbelievably well. What you do is get a ghostwriter. Most people in their companies can't put 2 words together. And so hire a writer, and then the structure of your book, take your core values plus your 3 brand promises. So your 4 or 5 core values and your 3 brand promises and your big, hairy, audacious goal and your purpose. And there you've got 10 to 12 chapters, and just write stories about where you've lived these values, these promises, these purpose with your customers, your employees, and your life. And so just tell some stories, make each chapter 10 or 12 pages. You've got 12 chapters. I think a 144-page book is perfect. I think thinner is better than thicker. And you're done. And you've got, if nothing else, a great recruiting tool for employees. Hey, you think you want to work here? Read this. And if you still think you want to work here, great. So that's what we encourage entrepreneurs to do, is keep it structured very simply like that. Hire a local ghostwriter from your local biz journal, and just get it done.
What's been the most rewarding part of writing and publishing your books?
The multiplier effect. The fact that you're out there basically speaking 24/7. because it's there. Someone at any one time is sitting someplace listening or reading, and you're able to really help people all the time. On the flip side, you're making money while you sleep. And so you like those royalties coming back. And as you know, when you self-publish, instead of getting $1 from Amazon, I'm getting $10 from Amazon. And that makes a big difference.
What would be your final parting piece of inspiration, tip, anything like that for someone thinking about writing and launching their first book?
Yeah, just do it sooner than later. Like, it's how I opened. I wish I had done it, Chandler, 10 years prior to when I did. But, you just never can seem to find the time. But I don't think there's a more important thing. Michael Dell wrote his book. Bill Gates wrote his book. All the folks know that getting that book out and your voice representing your ideas is critical in this, particularly this 21st century.
Verne, well, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's nighttime in Spain right now. Thanks for taking out the time and just rocking with this interview. One final thing, where can people go to find out more about you, about your books?
Just go to scalingup.com and the name of the book, and they'll hopefully sign up for my weekly insights. They're free on Thursdays, where I'm writing about this kind of stuff, and all the tools and articles and this free chapter and this free one-page personal plan is all up there. It's all up there, no charge.
Perfect. Verne, thank you so much.
You got it, Chandler. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for watching or listening to this episode of the Self-Publishing School podcast. I know there's so many places that you can be spending your time. There's other podcasts that you could be listening to, YouTube channels that you could be watching. So thank you so much. It means the world. Now, I want you to do 3 things right now if you found this episode helpful. All right, number 1, I don't know if you know this, but we've got a YouTube channel. It's a companion channel to this podcast. All the video versions of the episode are on the YouTube channel. So number 1, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Number 2, if you're listening to this podcast wherever, whether this is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, number 2, I want you to subscribe to this podcast right now so you don't miss a future episode. And then number 3, this is probably the most important, leave a review on the podcast. All right, reviews are super important and help the podcast get discovered by other people. So number 3, leave a review on the podcast. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next episode. If you're on the fence about scheduling a publishing consultation call with my team, maybe you're not quite ready for that, I've got some free training that I think will be really helpful for you. All right, all you have to do is go to register to sign up. Go to selfpublishing.com/free training. When you do, you're also going to get a free digital copy of my new book published. And on that training, you're going to learn the next steps, so how to implement with your book. So how to write, how to publish, how to launch successfully. So go to register right now at selfpublishing.com/free training. I'll see you there.